I'm Gary, and this is Coasting with Culture, which is all about combining theme park visits and riding roller coasters with various cultural experiences around the world. After spending a few days in the Rimini area, this Italy trip gets back on the road for a day of exploring two of Italy's best-known cities, walking the streets of both Florence and Pisa, while adding a couple of quick coaster stops that weren't originally on the itinerary. To kick off what would be the most culture-heavy day of our trip, we drove a couple hours from Rimini over to Florence and found a parking garage located near Fortezza de Basso, which was built back in the 16th century. While vehicles without a special permit aren't allowed in the city center, parking closer to the fort gave us a chance to enjoy a nice walk through the city, especially for its architecture and for the likes of seeing Mercato Centrale. During this walk, we saw many historic buildings, including Basilica di San Lorenzo, a Renaissance church with the burial place of Cosimo di Medici, a banker and politician whose family effectively ruled over Florence during the Italian Renaissance. Only a few blocks away was another landmark place of worship, Cattedrale di Santa Maria del Fiore, a 13th century cathedral with its famed red-tiled dome that visitors can view the city from, its beautiful marble facade, and its iconic Giotto Tower, from which its bells toll. As we strolled further into the city, we found sites such as Piazza della Repubblica and the 16th century covered market building of Mercato del Porcellino, which featured Fontana del Porcellino, a bronze fountain featuring a boar whose nose people will rub for good luck or to ensure a safe return to Florence. As we strolled further, we found sites such as Palazzo Vecchio, Florence's 14th century town hall that stands over Piazza della Signoria, which was a Mediterranean cruise tour hotspot. Many of these tour groups were here to see the statues under the arches of Loggia di Lanzi, most of which were made out of marble built between the 1500s and 1800s. One of the square's most prominent statues was a replica of Leonardo da Vinci's famed statue of David, which sits right outside the town hall. One of the more fascinating dynamics of Florence is an elevated walkway that connects buildings and allowed the city's elites to visit some of the more popular spots without having to walk amongst the commoners. Follow it all the way to the Arno, and you'll find that it crosses Ponte Vecchio, a medieval bridge with multiple shops that spans across the river, many of which sell jewelry. Halfway across the bridge, you can see further down the Arno. Walking around a city for a while sure builds up an appetite, and just across the river, we found Trattoria di Guardici, which turned out to have a nice little oasis for us, as they had a separate smaller room with windows and air conditioning, giving us a nice break from the Tuscany heat, especially with a cold Birra Nazionale from the Italian brewery Birra Belladin. And it made me a bit sad that I waited this long to have some ravioli that wasn't stored on a pantry shelf in a tin can. The flavor from the beef and tomato sauce, combined with a bit of Parmesan and some crispiness from the small strips of bacon, made it all come together quite nicely. As we began to walk back to the car, we made a quick stop at a gelato stand for another cold treat, only this time I went with a sorbetto molone, a cantaloupe sorbet that was oh so good. While Florence was really busy and we only had a short time for our visit, I appreciated the chance to explore a bit of this beautiful city and would absolutely come back for more. Originally, this was going to be purely a culture day without any parks, but after some back and forth, we decided to add a couple shameless coaster stops, one of which took us to the town of Lido di Camaiore, home of Parco Pitagora. Much like some of the small parks near Rimini, this place offers a few smaller rides, including yet another Bruco Mela, making this the fourth of the common Wacky Worm layout for the trip. After another coaster stop, we found ourselves crossing the Arno once more, into the city of Pisa. The room we had at Hotel Le Pace was pretty tight for 3 people, but that didn't matter too much since it wouldn't be long before we were out wandering again. With Pisa also being in Tuscany, its buildings along the Arno shared many of the same characteristics as those in Florence, especially with all the light colors that they painted with. Strolling through town, you'll find a number of narrow streets, some of which have remains from older buildings that once stood there. But there was one building in particular that we went to see, which is among the nation's most famous landmarks. And when you notice one that doesn't seem to be at the same angle as its neighbors, you will have found none other than the world-renowned Leaning Tower of Pisa, the iconic bell tower of the Pisa Cathedral, which leans at a 4-degree angle due to the soft ground surrounding it that makes its foundation unstable. At its worst, it reached a 5.5-degree angle, but some structural work was done in the 90s and 2000s to help shore it up a bit, resulting in its current 4-degree lean. Seeing this beautiful 14th century structure was a bit surreal, as even though I had seen a ton of pictures of it and it was standing right in front of me, it somehow seemed less real, as if maybe I wasn't really seeing it. But I can at least confirm that it's actually there. Is there a landmark that you had known about for a long time, but then almost felt like it couldn't be real when you saw it? Share your moments of disbelief in the comment section below. It would be fun to see if we have any in common. The tower, along with the cathedral and baptistry, are all surrounded by well-manicured lawns, and you can see the connections between the 3 as their superstructures share similar patterns and colors. Although the baptistry has some incredibly detailed sculptures across multiple levels of the upper ring. It was neat to have finally seen one of the country's most famous buildings, and with it being a popular destination in town, there were several restaurants to choose from nearby, so why not go with a place right around the corner from it? Here they offered several beers from a Tuscany brewery called Sara Giuliano, including the Valle Blonde Ale, which might have been among the best Italian beers I tried during the trip. Add another serving of delicious carbonara, and I was a happy camper. All that was left to do was enjoy the stroll back to the hotel, although we didn't necessarily go right back. Rather, we grabbed the rental car and made our way for another last-minute addition, heading closer to the coast of the Ligurian Sea and into the small coastal town of Tirrenia. It was here that we find yet another coaster stop in the small Luna Park di Tirrenia, which had more of a small permanent carnival feel to it. And like Parco Pitagora earlier in the day, there was another Brucomela, only this one had a unique touch. While the fountain was nowhere near as impressive as the one surrounded by the helix of Candemonium at Hershey Park, it certainly was a unique touch for this rather common coaster model. And with another +1, it was time to head back to the hotel for the night. A day that was light on coasters compared to the previous days of the trip made for the opportunity to enjoy 2 of Italy's historic cities, taking in some of the great artwork and unique architecture they feature, while also partaking in more of their culinary delights along the way. The next part of our journey, though, would see several coasters on the last extended drive between cities in Italy, including a coaster of a rare variety that once called Canada home. Thank you for watching this video from Coasting with Culture. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and click on the subscribe button to see future videos here on YouTube, like these ones which you may enjoy as well. Additional content can be found at coastingwithculture.com, and you can also follow Coasting with Culture on various social media channels at CoastWCulture for announcements, previews, and updates. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, take care and safe travels.